Welcome to Minhag Dirigo. This is a Maine Jewish podcast. And with us today, I have a special guest, and I'm going to kick it over to you, Don, to introduce yourself and what you do.
So thank you so much, Brian. I'm Dawn LaRochelle. I am the executive director at the Maine Jewish Museum in Portland, Maine.
Oh, that is so awesome. Could you tell us a little bit about the Maine Jewish Museum and what it's all about?
Absolutely. So the Maine Jewish Museum is one of only a handful of museums that lives inside and operates integrally with an operating century-old plus synagogue called Etz Chaim. We always say the building itself is the museum because it contains so much history. And through art exhibitions and historical displays and diverse programming, our goal is to build bridges with people of all backgrounds as they learn about the rich history of Maine's Jewish community.
Awesome. Uh, I always start these with asking Jewish guests about where they're finding Jewish joy right now. And I know that's something I've seen you put on social media about. And, it's a great icebreaker, but it's also, we live in a time of kind of doom and gloom for the Jewish community. So I like to hunt the good stuff and start with that. Where do you find Jewish joy?
I love it, Brian. Well, right now, I am really finding Jewish joy in community. And when I say community, I mean in rooms where people are gathering to learn, to have dialogue across difference, to sing, to reflect, to ask hard questions. And it's just one example. This past Saturday, we partnered with One Longfellow Square on a sold-out concert that grew out of a week-long residency at the museum with David Krakauer. He's kind of the goat of klezmer clarinet and a major force in modern Jewish music. And what struck me wasn't just the music, as wonderful as it was the feeling in the room. People leaning toward each other, strangers becoming neighbors. It just really got you in your kishkas, you know what I mean?
Oh,
And that feeling is not just limited to concerts. I see it when school groups visit, when kids ask fearless questions, when volunteers greet visitors at the door, when someone walks into the sanctuary for the first time. So yeah, Jewish joy for me isn't escapism. It's the insistence that even as you were saying, in these complicated times, we still show up for each other.
oh, great answer. About the Maine State Jewish Museum, how did you come to be executive director, and what made you like want to sink your teeth into that role?
Well, I took the scenic route to get to the Maine Jewish Museum. I often joke that I have what I sometimes call a very diverse resume and sometimes call a very odd career trajectory, depending on the day. I started out as a Wall Street attorney, then became a stay-at-home mom, then became a restaurateur and caterer. I had the first and only, to this day, kosher catering business in Western Massachusetts. Then I became a middle and high school English and ESL teacher. And then during COVID, I was a small business consultant. Every chapter in that twisted path revolved around communication, community, storytelling, and building things from the ground up. So when the Maine Jewish Museum opportunity came along, it actually felt surprisingly coherent, even though I had never before worked in a museum. The role sits right at the intersection of education, community building, storytelling, and organizational growth. Yes, we preserve Maine Jewish history at the Maine Jewish Museum, but we are also a living Jewish cultural center that hosts, as I was saying before, contemporary art exhibitions, music residencies, school programs, community conversations, etc. And we are actively shaping what Jewish life in Maine looks like today.
Amazing. Was there a moment as you've gotten like this unfolding flower of Maine's Jewish history, was there any history that surprised you or changed how you understood Maine?
Yeah, it really is how Maine history is very rural. So many of us, including me, originally thought that Jewish history is urban history. And seeing a state where we have third generation potato farmers and maple syrupers, right, was really surprising and fascinating to me. Maine Jews And the Maine Jewish community has a character that's very different than any other place I have ever lived.
I guess this all kinds of it runs along the same lines. What does it does it take, does your work take on a special significance, stewarding a Jewish institution like this in a place like Maine?
Yes, it does. Because we are such a small but mighty and vibrant community. We are the smallest city, Portland, in the nation with an independent Jewish film festival. We have a Jewish museum that represents the entire state. Note that we are not the Portland Jewish Museum, we are the Maine Jewish Museum. We have multiple synagogues throughout the state, many diverse ways of practicing Jewishness. And I was just thinking, I guess for me, it was not a moment I experienced directly. It was something I heard of and that I think about every single time I'm in our museum. Um, Maine Jewish Museum in May 2020, so those horrible, dark early days of COVID, had a fire behind the Ark where the Torah is kept. Fortunately, it was an electric fire. And fortunately, nobody was hurt, but the building needed to be doused and we were down to the studs. This was, mind you, after we had 1 week ago completed a major renovation.
Wow. Gosh, yeah, I mean,
Back again to those days in the beginning of COVID. It was a time of great uncertainty, right? Everyone was not only scared about their health, but about their financial well-being. We didn't know if we were going to have jobs. Small businesses were folding left and right. And yet, in that really precarious time, we were able to raise enough money from our caring community that between what we raised and the money we got from insurance, we were able to build back and build back better. And now, if you go into the museum, sort of a physical reminder of this, you go into our beautiful, as I said, century plus old sanctuary. Uh, Everything you see there was either very lovingly refurbished by local artisans or recreated from scratch as an exact replica of the original, up to and including the clouds painted on the ceiling. And the windows are iconic stained glass windows. I'll often ask visitors, do you notice anything interesting here? They always have wild answers that are never it. And then I point out to them that you'll see the green in the glass of two of the panes is a slightly different shade than the green in the glass of the other two, because one pane was able to be restored and one had to be recreated, and the exact shade of green that was used 100 plus years ago no longer exists. I think that is just so cool. And it really adds those layers of stories, which are at the end of the day, what make museums exciting places to be. It's the stories.
I mean, I guess that kind of that does answer the question that I would ask is if somebody has never visited the museum, what would you tell them to get them to come? And that really sounds like a good answer for that. So it's
So you're asking about my elevator speech at the Maine Jewish Museum. So I would tell them what I told you, that we are a historic synagogue turned vibrant cultural center. And right now we are flipping the script on what a small history museum can feel like. We are shifting from static displays to the storytelling that I was describing, bringing together Maine's Jewish past with contemporary Jewish life creativity, and let's go back to it, Jewish joy. We want every single visitor walks into the museum to understand that they are active agents in history making. So history isn't just something that happened in the past. It is unfolding right now, and each of us is playing a role, however minor or major, in shaping that history. So I'm hoping that when visitors come to our museum, they leave curious and excited to come back because they have not learned everything there is to know about Maine Jewish history or Maine's Jewish community. The story is still being written and they are helping write it.
That is awesome. Do you have any meaningful collections that are the most meaningful to you that you would love for people to come see, up to and including upcoming exhibits?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the most meaningful artifact in the museum is the building itself. We were founded, as I told you in the beginning, on the idea that the historic synagogue is the collection, and visitors are standing inside history. We don't really have artifacts or collections per se. We have exhibitions, some permanent, that are more, again, in that storytelling mode, and where in the process of reimagining how to tell those stories. And we have art exhibitions that switch out every 8 weeks. And an upcoming exhibition that I'm super excited about is called There Is Always an And. It is opening on March 5th. And first of all, one of the neat things about that exhibition is it lives at the intersection of art and history. It's a photographic exhibition um, that involves over 300 Jewish Mainers, so over 1% of the state's Jewish population. Their photos were taken by Israeli photographers and friends of mine, Hedva Rakach and her partner Itai Bahor, who traveled 7,000 miles across the state to take them. And these photographs are in and of themselves works of art, absolutely. But the idea is to showcase the richness and diversity of Maine's Jewish community. Some of it are the low-hanging fruit of race and ethnicity and gender, but much of it has to do with so many other factors. It's rural versus urban, it's homesteaders, it's the potato farmers, it's the things that make us uniquely Mainers. And additionally, I wanted to shatter on any notion about toxic binaries that I think are polarizing society general and even the Jewish community these days, where people think they have to be this or that, either or. That's why that ampersand, and there is always an and in ampersand, is so very, very important. We all contain multiple and often contradictory truths. And who we are and how we identify as Jews can change dramatically over time. My own relationship to my Judaism has probably changed at least a dozen times in my lifetime and continues to change over time. The way I build my Jewish house, I renovate that house sometimes, and sometimes some things are emphasized more than others. The other really neat thing about these photographs, they're organized by region. As you walk throughout the museum, it takes up all 3 floors. 25 of them currently link to professional video interviews via QR codes that you can access when you view the exhibition. There are short form ones as well as full video interviews, and they are really, really amazing. There is going to be a companion book that has all these photographs as well as the QR codes, and it is going to be delivered to every single high school in Maine. There are many Maine youth who have not knowingly ever even met a Jew, and their only real knowledge of the Jewish community comes from mandatory Holocaust lessons and whatever they are seeing on social media and gaming sites and in clickbait news headlines. And I don't need to tell you how horrible and tropey those are. So my feeling is to hold this book, to see photos of Mainers like them and hear their stories. So here we're going into the storytelling again, is a way of humanizing a community that for them has been flattened often into a symbol or a headline. And we're going to have, curricula that goes with this. So that's very exciting to me. Additionally, this exhibition caught the interest of Colby College. Professor David Friedenreich is going to be using the Ampersand exhibition to humanize the 2024 Maine Jewish Survey and the data in there with his Maine Jewish History class. And the students' final presentation is going to be a poster session
That is fantastic. And
that will
that
be open to
really,
the public at the museum on the last day of the exhibition on May 3rd.
that is so fantastic. And it really does answer the question of how the museum and how its materials are accessible to non-Jewish visitors. If uh, is there anything you would tell us about how the museum, beyond that, how the museum relates for non-Jewish visitors? What
Absolutely. There is no way you could study Maine history or understand Maine history without understanding Maine Jewish history. Maine Jewish history is an integral part of Maine history and has been from day one. We even have right now a Portland Jewish history trail that people can walk. It's a self-guided trail where they can learn about the contributions that Jewish people have made to the city of Portland from the 19th century onward. And it's really, really interesting. You're looking at these streets and buildings and seeing this hidden history that no one knew exists. Many people don't know exists, and but for which so many of the buildings and streets and communities we have would be either non-existent or extremely different than they are today. We hope to recreate that trail in other parts of the state. If you lobby us hard enough, we'll make Bangor next. Um, but that's what I would say. I would say come because when you learn about Jewish history, you're also learning about Maine history and your own history.
That's one of the things I love about the state, and I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, so it's one of those things where you take the Jewish history of so much for granted, but you drive around places like Lewiston, Auburn, you drive around Portland, you drive around Bangor, and you see Jewish names on these building facades, and or you see like an old Escovitz potato sign somewhere in Aroostook County, and it's just so much more omnipresent. And then, but yet, it kind of feels like outside of maybe perhaps Portland, nobody really talks about that aspect. So it's amazing that you're doing this.
Thank
We,
you.
uh, do you guys find yourselves having to tackle any myths about Jews as part of the museum's mission?
Oh yeah. I mean, the first big myth is, you know, that that as you were talking about, why would anyone non-Jewish come in? One of the big myths is, oh, it's a Jewish museum. It's just for Jews. It's not just for Jews, because as I said, you learn about history generally by learning about Jewish history. We also have beautiful contemporary art collections that you could appreciate, not collections, rather. A rotating series that you could appreciate no matter what your religion is. The other big myth that I'm sure you have heard many times as well is, wait, there are Jews in Maine? Yes, there are Jews in Maine. And we are an integral part of this community. Those are pretty much the two big ones. In addition to just the general museum myth, oh, museums are boring and not relevant and only about the past. And we are really trying to turn that on its head.
That is fantastic. Shifting gears a little bit to the current circumstance in the state, and nationally and internationally, uh, do you find a role for the museum in addressing anti-Semitism, and especially without defining us by our persecution, as a casting it a positive historical light as much as we can. Uh,
Yeah, I love how you put that we don't define ourselves by those who hate us. We don't ignore anti-Semitism at the Maine Jewish Museum, but we refuse to let it define Jewish identity. Jewish life has never, ever been only a response to hate. It is a story of creativity and faith and humor and art and family and community. I often think about the Jewish concept, or Goyim, being a light unto nations, and by sharing stories and creating spaces of encounter, museums like the Maine Jewish Museum, I strongly believe can spread light. And in that vein, I really and truly believe that telling these joyful Jewish stories is not a distraction from anti-Semitism. It's not ignoring anti-Semitism. It's a critical part of the response.
Oh, beautiful. I can't tell you how much I love that. Not just just as a Jew in Maine, but also as a rabbinical. I wish we heard more about that. That this is the response to hate is just, yeah. Oh gosh. Does Jewish history in a small state like Maine, do you feel like it matters more right now than it ever has? I mean, obviously, it's a loaded question because, of course it does. You're the executive director of a museum, but also, it's
Yeah, well, of course, as you said, I'm probably biased. But that being said, at any time when the Jewish community has been challenged um, from forces outside of our community, we've really come together more and become stronger for it. So that's why we've survived millennia of nonstop persecution, absent, a brief golden age in the Golden Medina in the United States. And I think that when you're part of a small community, like we are here in Maine, as opposed to say you were in New York, or LA or someplace where you don't have to think much about being Jewish, or you can leave being actively Jewish to other people. You really have to, I think, make a big effort to show your Jewish pride and to contribute back to the community in ways that amplify our voices and help us stand strong against the hatred and polarization and division all around us.
And I guess this is, it's along the same line. Do you feel like museums have a responsibility in moments of rising polarization like now?
100%. Museums are a place where people of all beliefs and backgrounds can get together, can gather in a somewhat neutral space and connect, right? And the Maine Jewish Museum has really become that over certainly since I've joined as executive director, and particularly since the events of October 7th, we've become a place that people of all different kinds of political beliefs and feelings about Israel get together and are able to talk to one another and see each other as people rather than as others or symbols, as I was saying before. There's no flattening effect. So I treasure that, and it's something that it's a fire I actively try to tend.
Beautiful. I know this is redundant, but uh, what exhibits are you especially excited about at the museum? What's especially as we look forward in the coming year and your outlook for the future?
So did I mention the Ampersand exhibition? Yeah, there's always an end, of course.
Maybe it did.
Maybe did I talk about that at all? It's just been dominating my life for the past year, and that it's finally coming to fruition is really exciting. And I hope everybody who is hearing this will join us for our opening night reception, which is free and open to the public, 5 to 7. There will be Israeli wine. There will be cheese from Sissel and Daughters and the Cheese Iron. And it's going to be a really, really wonderful event. The photographer, Edva Rakach, and her partner, Itai Behor, are also flying in from Israel and will be there to answer questions and talk to people. Other than that, what I am super excited about right now is not one exhibition in particular. It's the fact that we are in the process of a core exhibition redesign, which involves reimagining the way we showcase our history and thinking that through and coming up with a concept for it has been really, really exciting. No surprise, I think, given what you've heard me say about ampersand and storytelling, there is always an and is really going to be the springboard from which we develop this exhibition. It's going to be about Jewish people throughout the state. It is not just about Portland Jews. It's going to be a forward-facing exhibition. So we're flipping the script a little bit, not ignoring the past, but not hyper-focusing on it. We're really going to be more interested in contemporary Jewish life and how Jewish Mainers interact with other communities in the state and how that, changes the dynamic over time about what it means to be a Jew. So thinking through that exhibition, what are we going to display in it? How many exhibitions are going to be permanent as opposed to rotating? How can we integrate our current celebrated art exhibition series so the museum doesn't feel as much like a bifurcated two-part museum with art exhibitions and historic museums, but thinking about art as part of our creative history in the state. It's been really exciting and fun, and I'm working with a great group of people to see that through. My hope, of course, if we raise the funds, which is a big part of my job, is that we will have that exhibition, the new core exhibition, up and running sometime in the beginning of 2027.
Oh, so exciting. Uh, what do you, I guess, personally, what do you hope that visitors take away after a visit to the museum? What do we, yeah,
So the biggest thing that I hope they take away is a feeling of connectivity. I want visitors to leave feeling more connected to their neighbors as well as their own sense of identity, whether they are Jewish or non-Jewish. And also, if someone leaves seeing Maine and the people around them a little bit differently, that for me is very meaningful. I want them to leave curious with more questions than answers, and maybe saying, hi, walked in feeling one way, I'm walking out feeling another way. What comes next, and when can I come back and see it?
nice. I guess that kind of button hooks then with what a vision of success looks like. And I from my where I sit, and I know I'm far flung away in Bangor. I would say that I think that you have been very successful as executive director. I have never known the Maine Jewish Museum in the decade that we've lived here to have the prominence and the centrality to our Jewish narrative as it does today. And I would attribute that to you. What does success look like to you?
Well, first of all, Brian, thank you so much for that. Those really kind words of support. But it's absolutely not just me. I have an amazing team, and an incredibly supportive board and a wonderful staff who kind of helps me in my crazy dreams, um, you know, match reality. But success for me looks like a museum that feels alive with school buses outside and artists creating. And as I said, people leaving curious and coming back again and again and again. I want the Maine Jewish Museum to be a place that becomes part of Maine's heartbeat. Um, you know, Thinking, you know what, this is not just a museum about Jews, it's a museum about belonging. It's a museum that is relevant to me regardless of my own background. And coming into this museum, I'm either seeing myself reflected or seeing myself reflected through someone else's eyes, and it changes me in some way. That's a successful museum. Of course, success also depends, as I said, on fundraising, which is always a big part of every executive director's job. That said, my philosophy is always, you know what, you got to dream big and let reality kind of catch up to you. And sometimes it actually does.
Amazing. I have an ambush question, as it were, and it actually comes from someone that had happened to be at the conference for small town Jewish life this past summer, and the question was, will you and your amazing husband be doing another cooking class at the conference, this next conference?
I can be convinced. It never takes much for me to cook. So and the really wonderful thing about being executive director at the Maine Jewish Museum, again, I have a really supportive board that lets me just run with things. So we have so many events where that are food centered, where I'm doing all the cooking and catering. And the board is like, yeah, sure. If you have the energy for it, go for it. We have a big one coming up the Sunday after actually the exhibition opening for Ampersand, and this is our second annual Shalom and Shamrocks, an Irish Jewish corned beef feast that this year will be held at the Irish Heritage Center, the Maine Irish Heritage Center. The It kind of goes into a little bit of history. The corned beef for St. Patrick's Day is actually a Jewish tradition. Irish people in big cities who lived in close proximity to Jews frequented delis, and corned beef in those days was cheaper than bacon. So they were buying corned beef, and that's how corned beef for St. Patrick's Day, became a thing. So we're going to be having both Irish corned beef, which I am making and corning for 7 days, as well as a Jewish corned beef deli. Brian, it's worth the shot from Bangor. It's sold out, but I could probably sneak you in.
Oh
Anyway,
gosh.
yes. So back to the Center for the Conference and Center for Small Town Jew excuse me, the Conference for Small Town Jewish Life, I could be convinced if enough people ask.
That would be awesome. I know I really enjoyed your class, and I also loved meeting your husband. He was fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on. People should visit mainjewishmuseum.org and look for that event on the 5th with there's always an and the ampersand. And should pe if people wanted to buy a copy of the book, is there a place should they come to the museum to buy it? Should they go
They
online?
should absolutely come to the museum to buy it. That's our sneaky way of making them come in the door because once they come in, they'll keep coming in. And all of the proceeds from that book, the sale of that book will go to the artist. So it's a cash or check only deal.
Great, great. Yeah, and gosh, having had the pleasure of meeting them when they came to capture our sisterhood and visit Congregation Beth Israel in Bangor, they were just so nice. And I'm so excited to see the end result of their work and all the people they caught on camera. That was wow,
You,
what an amazing amount of work. Oh,
you are going to be blown away, Brian. Everything you're envisioning about what it is, like, is plus, plus, plus. So I'm really excited for you to come and see it and see yourself on the wall. You look great.
oh, as long as I look pretty. Well, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Don. You're doing fantastic work, and we love you. Even up, everybody looks forward to your director's notes and everything that comes through. So, I'm sure there'll be more than a handful of folks from Bangor down in on the 5th.
Bring it on. We can't wait to see you.
Okay, thank you so much, and stay warm in the snow.
You too, Brian. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.